I am very delighted to have this conversation with Dr. Peter Phan, who teaches Catholic social thought at Georgetown University. We will ask him about his reactions to President Trump's criticizing the Pope in a post that he posted last Sunday. Welcome to the podcast, Peter.
Thank you very much.
So, Peter, I want to ask you, you are now living in Italy, not in the United States, and you heard more about Pope Leo than some of us here. Can you share with us your impression of the Pope?
Yes. First of all, thank you very much for having me. Great pleasure and honor to be in the podcast with you. In answer to your question, I live in Italy for almost 4 years now, and the general impression I have is that almost all Europeans are very upset about Trump, particularly about his war with Iran. And recently, a few days ago, with his post against Pope Leo XIV. But in general, the atmosphere is very anti-Trump, not only because of his personal characteristics, abilities, and defects, but also because of his political and military policies.
And what about the Pope? Do the Catholic people usually respect and love this new Pope, Pope Leo?
Yes. I have to say that when he was elected, after his election, there was a kind of a general wait and see, because he was not well known and he's very low key. He's not like Pope Francis, who can speak very charismatically to the people. And secondly, because he is an American, and there was a kind of suspicion about being an American Pope. So I would have to say that right after his election, there is a general wait and see. It's not an enthusiastic reception as Pope Francis had. But in the last 2 years, he had shown himself to be much more vocal, I would say, vocal in criticizing the politics of Trump, especially about his war of choice. As you know, he is an Augustinian. And the theory of the just war theory was proposed first by Saint Augustine in the 5th century. And so he's very much in the Augustinian tradition of the just war. And the war that Trump is carrying on with Iran right now fail all the 4 criteria of a just war. So that's what he's coming from. He's not a politician. He's talking about morality of a war that can be justified. If you want to, I can go into the conditions for a just war.
And also, why he is speaking out at this time? Because usually when there is a war, the Pope maybe sometimes refrains from speaking so directly. Because I know that last Tuesday on April the 7th, Trump posted that civilization is going to die and never be brought back again. That prompted, I think, Pope Leo really to speak out against this kind of threat.
You remember that Pope Leo said that the war against Iran is morally unacceptable. That's his word. It's morally totally unacceptable. Why? Because, first of all, it's a war, as he said many times, not in response to an immediate present threat. Sure, Iran has its own political problems and the government of the Ayatollah. That no one disputes that. But because of that, you carry out a war against the people. Therefore, there is no immediate present danger or threat to the United States. Second reason that he says that it is carried out not simply against the military or the government, but also the people themselves. So many people were killed. Remember the event when the elementary school was bombed with the children killed. Obviously, this is a crime against humanity. So, disproportionate result. And the third reason is that this war was not justified, was not authorized by the Congress. Every war must have not only a moral justification, but also a legal authorization. And Donald Trump in this war bypassed the approval of the Congress. And the last reason why it is an immoral war is that it has no reasonable expectation of a success, of an end. Usually, when you carry out a war, you have to project the possibility of how the war would end, what kind of result you expect. But this time, there was no explanation to the American people, not only why the war was carried out, but also what kind of prospect of success he is expected to achieve. So these are the reasons why Pope Leo declared that the American and Israeli war against Iran is morally unacceptable.
Now, as far as you know, what has been the reactions from the Catholic world responding to Pope Leo? Are they very supportive of him, or they were divided opinions?
Yes. After the Easter Sunday posting Donald put on his Truth Social, 3 cardinals, American cardinals, 3 of them who are active in the United States. There are more than 3 cardinals, but 3 of them are active in dioceses. They come out and condemn this war as immoral. They just simply reiterate Pope Leo XIV's evaluation or judgment on this war. More recently, about his posting about Pope Leo, saying that Pope Leo is liberal, Pope Leo is weak on crime, Pope Leo was elected because Donald Trump kind of support him because he's an American president and so forth. Right after that, there's a strong reaction of all the Catholic bishops and the majority of Catholics in America. But also in Europe, there's a lot of reaction against the later posting of Donald Trump. So there are two posts. The first one, when he declared the war, the death of civilization, and they will bomb the bridges and the oil refinery. That is a crime against humanity. That was the first reaction. But the second, more recent reaction is a few days ago. His reaction is against his posting against Pope Leo. By the way, we have to also look at his responses to journalists. That he was going to Mar-a-Lago on the airplane. He was asked a question, what do you think about your posting? He said, I am not a fan of Pope Leo. He repeated the same accusation that Pope Leo is weak on crime and too liberal.
In the last few days, I have watched commentators and pundits criticizing Trump being disrespectful. And also, that is, Pete Hegseth and others have also almost issued threats to the Pope's safety, to an extent whether the Pope can visit the United States or not becomes a question.
Yeah, right. As you know, the United States is celebrating the 250th anniversary, right? And they invited Pope to come, and Pope Leo said very diplomatically that he's busy and get something. But obviously it is a rebuke of Donald Trump that he will not come to the United States as long as Trump is president. But I think one point I'd like to make, very important, Trump misunderstands the role of the Pope. He sees him as a politician, liberal, weak on crime, the thing that they always use for a Democrat. He thinks that the Pope is a political figure. What the Pope says is as a moral teacher, not a politician. When he criticized the war in Iran as morally unacceptable, he's not talking about the military aspect of it, the political consequences or even the economic aspect. He's not talking about it. He's talking about the moral aspect. What is the gospel saying about the war? Be a peacemaker. Right? He's so much against, he explicitly condemned the invocation of God and Jesus as the protector of the United States, like Pete Hegseth, even Trump himself have invoked the name of Jesus. Invoked the name of Jesus to bless the war. And that's what Pope Leo said. No, you cannot invoke the gospel and the name of Jesus to justify the war.
Indeed. What do you think about J.D. Vance, who became a Catholic when he was converted at 35? So sometimes he is in a very tricky position.
Yes. But not only J.D. Vance is Catholic, but Marco Rubio is also Catholic. Many people in Trump's circle, in Trump secretaries, are Catholics. And it is very sad. And I had a conversation with one of my brothers and so forth 2 days ago. They said it's so sad that these people cannot and do not speak out of their Christian conviction because they will be afraid of losing their political prospects. So let's take, for example, the case of J.D. Vance. We knew from the report that J.D. Vance was opposed to the war in Iraq. He was the only one in the room that was opposed to it. But he said, well, if you want to the war, I will be in support. But that is a renunciation of a moral conviction. If you are truly opposed, morally speaking, to the war, you should simply say, I will no longer be vice president. He should have resigned. Say it clearly. And if Trump want him to resign, I will resign. The same thing with Marco Rubio, with all these judges. God, there are 9 judges. I think 6 are Catholics. Supreme Court.
Yes,
it's unbelievable. The number of Catholics in the Trump government that fail to say the truth about what they think. And I think they know, especially now with the Trump's attack on the Pope, they cannot, as a Catholic, condone this sort of thing. They have to go out and say clearly that Trump has overstepped the boundaries of American president.
And that is why I think one of them said that the Pope should be talking about morality and let President Trump deals with public policy, right? They differentiate the church and state in that way.
No, but the Pope is not talking about policies. He's talking about the morality of the war and morality of how you conduct the war. Not that policy, you have to do this and that in terms of elections. And no, he's not interested in that. But it's very interesting, that he is now in Algeria.
Yes.
And they are asking him, what do you think? He said, I will continue to speak because I am not a politician. I speak in the name of Jesus and for the gospel. And he said, I'm quoting, I am not afraid of the Trump administration. That's his word. I am not afraid of the Trump administration, that the threat of the indirect threat of the Avignon papacy, how it is, the King of France arrested the Pope and exiled him and then killed him. Interesting that this historical allusion tried to say, well, you had better be with us. Take outside, otherwise you will be in serious trouble. The Pope says, I am not afraid of it. And he said explicitly, I am not afraid of the Trump administration. So it shows that he's aware of the threat, but he will do whatever is needed to be done. And it's very interesting that it's in Algeria these days. As you know, Algeria is where St. Augustine was born in Tagaste. St. Augustine was in Carthage, and St. Augustine was the Bishop of Hippo. It's Algeria, part of Algeria today. To be there, and there's only 6,000 Catholics in Algeria. Only 6,000. Yeah, only 6,000. One of my students is now bishop there.
I see.
Pope goes to make a point that, it doesn't matter whether it's a big church, small church. He goes there to tell us about how to have relations with Muslims.
Yes.
Because the majority of Algeria are Muslims. So to go there, tell them, this is how you deal with Muslims, not with bombs like the Muslim in Iraq.
I want to ask the opinion, because after he posted that attack, that saying that the Pope is weak on crime. And less than an hour later, he posted himself. You see, he trumped the authority of the Pope. He imagined himself as Jesus. Many of us are very upset about that portrayal of him as Jesus.
Yeah, I saw it yesterday. But anyway, this is not the first time that Donald Trump really is sacrilegious. This is the word I would use, a sacrilege. Remember, during the election of Pope Leo, he dressed himself as the Pope.
Yes.
Yeah, already then. So he already project himself as the Pope, dressed as the Pope. And the picture is still available on his website. But the second one, even more sacrilegious, is that an AI generated picture, but he posted it himself as Jesus healing the sick, healing. And if you take a close look at the photograph, it is weird, very, very weird. On top of it, there's an airplane, military airplane, on the background. And in the middle, there are three figures, strange figures. And the gesture is healing the sick. And he was asked about it, and he said, I thought I was playing the doctor.
Yes.
How could you say something like that? And whoever believed that? He said, I just present myself as a doctor. But his spiritual counselor, Paula White, declared him to be the risen Christ in a meeting. You are persecuted, you are killed, and now you are risen. There is the whole conversation among the MAGA to elevate him into the figure of Christ's resurrection. The same thing with Peter Hexet. All of them project this image of Trump as the Messiah, as the coming of Jesus. And of course, I think he doesn't put out the picture for us, for you and me. He puts it out for the MAGA people who already in their mind has formed the idea that Trump is the Christ coming. And that's why also the whole idea of Armageddon, the whole idea of the war in Iran is the end of time. It's very much popular with the, I would say, conservative evangelicals. They believe that the war is prelude to the second coming of Christ. So we need to do everything we can to hasten the coming of Christ. So it's the whole theology, white evangelical theology, the idea of making Trump like the second coming of Christ. This is not something new. It's already present in his first term, lately in the second term, the first and second term. It became much more explicit, much more vocal than before. Yeah, it should worry us Christians. Whether you are Republican or Democrat or independent, it doesn't matter. But this is something that is projected out there on the media, and Christians must speak out against it, whether you are for him or against him or whatever political inclination you have.
Thank you very much for speaking on my podcast to help us understand the whole scenario of Trump's attack of Pope Leo. If you like this episode, please click like, comment. I will see you in the next episode.
All right.